Welcome. Welcome to the Experience Podcast. My name is Dennis, and I'm here today to give you a hand if you make a conscious choice of receiving my hand to lead you out of and to guide you out of the old world into the new earth. And the way that you can do that by accepting this hand up and hand out is by clicking on the Calendly link in the description. You'll receive 30 minutes of my time, and I'm living here in Costa Rica, building and co-creating the new earth. And this is an invitation to do the same. And so I'm sitting here in the new earth, grateful to be here with Neal. And so, welcome.
My name is Neal. Neal's my name, but Neal's actually not who I am. Neal's included in who I am. So who am I? Well, who I am is a multi-dimensional, infinite spiritual being that's expressing through a human body. And I have a name, but I'm not my name. And that's important because actually what the Matrix calls your name is exactly that. It's part of the Matrix. And the Matrix being the programming that is what is keeping you from the full experience of oneness, the full experience of infinite connection, the full-on experience of peace. And the name is part of that programming. And I invite you to join these live streams. These live streams are happening every Wednesday at 3 p.m. That's Central Standard Time. And you're invited to come join these. And in addition, on Wednesdays, I host a virtual natural balance masterclass. So virtual natural balance masterclass is specifically a masterclass where you have an opportunity to practice being whole and complete while connecting with others. And in that masterclass, we also network and we also give and receive offers, which is the expression of your gift and your contribution. And it's an opportunity to see somebody else's gift and contribution and be able to receive it and have them receive your gift. And so you're invited. That's happening today, Wednesday at 5:30 Central Standard Time. And welcome. Right now in this moment, like I was like in this inquiry today of like, I wonder what this podcast is going to be. And what it is a podcast specifically on when I have darkness within, like leaning into that and not looking away from it, actually not even moving away from it, but conversely, directly stepping into it, moving in the direction of the darkness. And in doing so, pouring the salt in the perceived wound, and the wound is what I'm also calling the darkness.
Can you give an example?
And yes, I can. And in the pouring of the salt into the wound, that's the leaning in part. And the intention of the leaning in being for the full-on distinguishment of it and the transcendence of the darkness. An example is like...
I got another question real quick. Before you get to that, if you can hold that. Because for somebody that's watching this, what is the wound? Like, can you distinguish the wound before you go to where you were going?
I think it's the example, and the wound will be included.
Perfect.
And the wound is any trauma, and it's any programming that is detrimental to your soul like in this case, your soul's full expression, and in this case, actually God's full expression through your physical body. And so any programming that is keeping that from happening, or any trauma that actually like hurts. And so here's the example. So it's like an angry person. So if I'm like angry a lot of the time, but I'm just like angry, and I don't know why, then that is what I'm calling a wound. Like that's a trauma that's stemming from something. And pouring salt into that would be like pissing myself off, doing things that make me angry. And so we, as perceived individuals, we can pour salt in our own wounds and in our own traumas, but there's a degree with our subconscious brain where we literally block out trauma and we block out programming. Our ego does it for keeping us in the perception of safety. Like we're already safe, but like when we have these like traumatic events, like the ego will sometimes like it's like a clam that gets sand in it, and the sand is the trauma, and then the clam glazes over the sand, and to keep it from the perception of hurting the clam, and in this case, the subconscious glazes over the trauma to generate the perception that it doesn't get hurt by the trauma. But then what that does is it just keeps the thing just keeps showing up. And so what I'm speaking to today is a recipe to have that trauma and to have that programming like stop showing up, like actually transcending it, actually moving through it. And as a result, stepping into peace and stepping into experience the full-on experience of love. So that's what I got for right now.
So what I just heard and what you were distinguishing is a couple of things. Number one is that the wound that we're talking about is only a wound to the ego, because in reality we are perfection. If you watching this, you are a king and a queen, or a queen created in the image of God. So what Neal is speaking to, or at least what I heard, is that when we are pouring salt on the wound, we are removing the barriers from us seeing the perfection that we truly are in God's perspective. And so when there's a perceived wound in Dennis, I can't see anything other than the wound. So for me, the recipe to transcend that wound is for people that have taken that journey already to pour salt onto the thing that's hurting Dennis. It's only a perceived hurt, because in reality, we are whole and complete. And so it's only a misperception of not being whole, whole and complete and being perfect. So if I can get the people that have taken the journey, or even people outside of me, an outside perspective, to pour salt onto that wound, and make it hurt bad enough, or allow me to see from a different perspective, because transformation is only a shift in perspective. That's all it is. That's all a breakthrough is. So by doing that, and by inquiring and actually leaning into and asking, well, where is this hurt coming from? Like asking questions that will reveal the truth about who I really am.
And hurt is also just a perception. Like
Yes.
hurt is a word in language that we're using to label a sensation we're feeling in the body or on the soul or the emotional level. So hurt only exists because we speak it. You can have the exact same sensation and have it not be hurt, but it only exists because we call it that. And so, um, so hurt, the trauma, that is an indicator of like where to look at to move through it to then be able to operate and function at a higher level of operation. And like with the transcendence of the trauma, that's like the ultimate thing. Like that's like the thing, like that's like if that happens, that wow, that's like the cake is like fully baked, cherries on top, like that's the whole thing. But before the whole thing, when the salt starts getting poured into trauma or when you start getting poked at like that, maybe I haven't fully transcended that at that point. And so it's, and how I know if I haven't transcended it is like if I was being angry and then someone does something and I get angry, I haven't transcended the anger yet. And so when the salt is getting poured into the trauma, into the wound, there's this also this like that's the test. That is when you're it's the test to see if you've already moved through it. But then in addition to that, you can also use that to fully distinguish what the trauma is and fully distinguish what the darkness is, that and the darkness and the trauma I'm actually like holding synonymous here. So using when it comes up to distinguish where it came from and distinguish its origin. And it's like I was saying like a little bit prior, like if I'm angry, but I don't have distinguished where that came from, or I have no idea of or conceptualization of where that anger is from, then at that case, in that point, or in that scenario, that's an angry person that's just in the world angry with no idea distinguishment of why they're angry. And so that's unconscious. And so the pouring of the salt into the wound, that's the start of being conscious. That's the start of like, oh, there's this thing, there's this trauma, there's this pattern, there's this program, and it's getting poked at. And because it's getting poked at, like before it was unconscious, but now it's being brought into conscious. And when it's now conscious, it's only once it's conscious and we release our resistance to it and we step into the acceptance of the darkness, but not the acceptance that it's going to be there forever, the acceptance that it has served its purpose, but we actually don't need it now. And it's in that acceptance that then is a foundation for the start of the transcending it. Maybe it's transcended immediately in the acceptance, but possibly there's an unfolding of transcending it also.
Another thing that I just want to clarify for someone that this might be your first time watching our YouTube channel. Another way that you can relate to,
if that's you, welcome.
Yeah. Another way to relate to trauma is triggers. Anytime that you feel your temperature rising in your body, or a sensation of like anger or frustration or overwhelmment or anything like that, that is what Neal's talking about when he's talking about trauma. And oftentimes these are things that happened when we were very young, like 5 to 7, 10 years old. And we continue to live in those moments for the rest of our life until we transcend it. So there are ways that a person can transcend it after you pour salt into the wound. I don't know if that's the direction that we want to go to on this video, like completely give the recipe.
Yes, but I want to speak to like salt. So like
Okay.
salt is a preserver. So you can use salt to like preserve meat, but it's also like a cleanser. You can also use salt as like a sage, like to literally cleanse negative energy from a space. And so salt, being this purifier, being this like preserver, um, when I'm speaking to pouring salt in the wound, it hurts. It's like, ow. And that hurt is purification happening. So just putting that in and wherever you were going, let it rip.
Yeah, it could be the same thing as like things getting put into the fire to get purified, like a ruby or a diamond and etc. So I want to invite you to reach out to Neal or myself. Like if you have any questions on this as far as the recipe, uh, reach out to Neal or myself. And so this pouring of the salt onto your wound or trigger or trauma, the more that, like if I feel something within, like today, we were sitting at the table and there was a comment made about the Holy Spirit going to one of our community members to seek guidance for the Holy Spirit. So basically, what I heard is that a lot of the community is going to this person to receive guidance from the Holy Spirit that's in each and every one of us. And it did something. Like I felt this woof, like I was like, whoa, like I've been feeling it and I've been talking about it to my wife, and I'm like, all right, it's time to say something. The time is now, because I had judgment. And so I said something about it. But that's what I'm speaking about. And then
woof,
yes.
and then if you just feel the woof and you're unconscious to what the woof is, then you're feeling judgment without having the distinction that it's judgment, and that's unconscious. But you're at a level where you're like, that woof that I'm feeling is that energy is judgment, and that's the level of conscious.
So then speaking to it and asking the people that were around me, like, what is this? Like, what is this that I'm feeling? And getting perspectives from people that have taken the journey. And it allowed me to have a shift in my perspective. Like I recognize that my ego obviously loves to be in control, as do all egos.
Yeah, that's actually one of its greatest joys.
And it's actually, I spoke to this woman afterwards, Tammy actually, and she's like, yeah, like they literally just broke the spirit of punishment. Like both Sarah and I have it. And it was a little bit of codependency. A little bit doesn't even fuck. It was codependency, control, and and punishment. My ego loves to get the beating stick out when I just on anything, to keep me small and to punish myself.
So codependency, control, and punishment, those are all three mechanisms that a person can operate from, that is the result of a trauma that somebody has experienced in their lifetime. And it's like a protective mechanism. It's a safety mechanism. It's creating the perception that you're unsafe and needing to be controlling, or needing to be punishing, or needing to be, what was the other one? Codependent,
yes,
in order to be safe. But that's the trauma. That's the thing showing up.
It was also like this energy of going to because of my past, using the Bible and things like that to, like, it was overpendulated. So using that because I was punishing myself of the past from my brief understanding and the brief conversation I had. So And the reason I'm speaking to this, and this is more for Neal than it is for you, but this was actually the flying monkey. How I had that energy rise up was actually a flying monkey of the work that Tammy and Chris did prior to coming to the table today. It was literally the exact thing. So,
So my point is,
when we feel these things, is to ask people that have taken the journey, ask people that have what you want for their perspective. Because most of the time, when we feel these things, we can't see anything other than from the space of the trigger, of the trauma, of the thing that happened 30 years ago.
exactly. That's why, like, you can pour salt in your own wound, but it'll only get you so far. And if somebody else is like the one that's pouring it in, that's like how you really find out like what you're made of, like actually factually full on. Because when somebody else is doing it, like it is amplified to a level that you might not be able to do it yourself. So with that, like, I feel complete with this. Is there anything you want to speak to, Dennis? Or?
Yes, 2 more events. This Saturday, we have Off Grid Dream Life, and you can find that at offgriddreamlife.com, 12 p.m. or 11 p.m. Central Time, I believe. The link will be in the description. And also, November 22nd, we have the Remember Experience live here in Costa Rica. I can't share anything more than it is an experience. It's not an event, it's an experience. And I can promise you it will be the most transformational experience of 2024 if you show up and you participate. And that's all I got.
All right. I love you. Thank you for being you. You actually are the gift, whether you believe it, like it, dislike it, embrace it. You are the gift. Peace.